Welcome to the video solutions for the City and Guilds Functional Skills English Level 2 Writing Sample Paper 4. In this video, we will go through the questions and you can get a better idea of what you want your answers to look like, as well as what to look out for when planning your answers. So before we take a look at the model answers, we're just going to have a look at the marking guidance. So what will you be marked on? You'll be marked based on your writing composition, which includes clarity of writing, does your writing make sense, length and detail, the use of organisational features, appropriate language and register, and using complex sentences as well. So this will take up 56% of your marks, and then 44% will cover your spelling, punctuation and grammar. So what do you need to do to achieve high marks during the exam? You need to consistently communicate information, ideas and opinions clearly, coherently and effectively. So this essentially means that you need to communicate clearly and effectively. So you need to present your ideas in a way that's easy for the reader to understand. Consistently writes text of appropriate level of detail to suit purpose and audience. So this means that you need to include lots of details, but not go into too much detail. You just want enough so that you are fulfilling the purpose of the text and an appropriate level of detail for the audience. So for example, if you were writing for a group of children, you wouldn't want to go into too much detail because they might not understand what you mean. Consistently organises writing for different purposes, using appropriate format and structure and paragraphs. So you need to be using different organisational techniques in your writing, depending on the different purposes, so the different text types that you'll be using. You want to use a good structure that is logical, and you want to use paragraphs to do this. Consistently conveys clear meaning and establishes cohesion using organisational markers. Well, you need to make sure that your writing is cohesive. That means that every one of your ideas joins up to something else that you've said. So linking your information and ideas together to make sure that the entire answer flows effectively. Consistently uses different language and register suited to audience and purpose. So the language that you use will have a different style depending on the audience and purpose that you're writing for. So if you were writing for a professional audience, like a manager at your company, you would want to use formal language and you'd probably have quite a serious register in your writing. Consistently and accurately constructs complex sentences. Now, complex sentences are sentences with lots of ideas contained in one sentence, and this will help you to achieve cohesion as well, because you'll be connecting ideas together in a single sentence. So now that you know what you'll be marked on, let's take a look at the first question. One flight from London to South Africa produces as much pollution as each passenger heating their own home for a whole year. Aircraft fuel is one of the biggest causes of global warming and climate change. Should we reduce the amount that we fly? Should we only take holidays in the UK? Should the price of plane tickets go up to stop so many people flying? Are people's rights to have a holiday abroad more important than the planet? Your task is to write an article for a student magazine exploring the issue of so many people flying abroad for the holidays and the pollution it causes. Your suggested word count is 250 to 300 words. So in this question, we've been given a little bit of context and then we've been asked some questions that we need to consider in our writing. The task is to write an article, so that's the text type that we need to write, and we'll need to use the correct formatting features for an article. We're focusing on students as our audience, and we're writing for a magazine for them. So this is probably going to be quite an informal text because we're writing for a magazine rather than a newspaper. And we are exploring the issue of people flying abroad for holidays. So the questions here and these facts can help us give us some ideas of what we can write about. But we can talk about pollution associated with flying. That is the topic that our entire answer needs to focus on. So now let's have a look at an example answer. Don't catch flights. When you are jetting off on your summer holidays, you might think that the environment should be the least of your concerns. Think again. Did you know that flying is a major contributor to global warming and this catastrophic climate crisis? Impacts of flying: causes pollution, warms the earth to unprecedented levels, leaves a huge carbon footprint. The UK boasts some simply outstanding sites of natural beauty, from the sunny south coast to the scenic architecture of the nation's favourite cities. There is really something for everyone. Our plea to you: consider these spots over your typical foreign retreats, and you will be rewarded with the same excitable feeling. Only this time, your mind will be cleansed with the knowledge that you yourself are helping the environment. Even just making a small change like this to your holiday scheduling will make a tremendous difference in the long term. We should also put pressure on airlines to increase the prices of their plane tickets. This will undoubtedly be met with a lot of unhappiness from many different sectors, including tourism officers, airport staff, and the airlines themselves. However, surely the survival of Earth is more important than a week's holiday. Some doubters may say that holidays abroad are a chance for people to escape from the daily troubles of day-to-day life, but this selfish attitude will only hold people and the world back. We, as students, must take measures to protect our futures, and there is no better time than the present. We must act now. So now we're going to analyse why this is a good answer based on the marking criteria. This would get very high marks for a number of reasons. Let's look at punctuation to start with. So this answer uses capital letters and full stops for every sentence. Here, here, and here. We've also got a question mark at the end of a sentence. Remember that you can either use a full stop, a question mark, or an exclamation mark to end your sentences. We've also got commas used throughout the answer to add further detail to our sentences. So for example, we've got when you are jetting off on your summer holidays, comma, you might think that the environment should be the least of your concerns. So here the comma has been added to join two related ideas together. We've got a question mark to get the reader thinking about the issue. And then later on we have a semicolon here. Now this is quite a sophisticated piece of punctuation and you don't have to use these in your answers, but they are used to elaborate and add more information. When you could stop a sentence, they carry the sentence on. Finally, in this paragraph here, we have a question mark used again to ask this rhetorical question. However, surely the survival of Earth is more important than a week's holiday, to try and persuade the reader. Finally, we have day-to-day life has used hyphens, and hyphens create one word from several words. So day-to-day has a different meaning than the separate words that are used to form it. In addition to using varied punctuation correctly, you should consider your grammar and spelling. So grammar essentially means that your sentences need to be accurate and they make sense on their own. And this will make your answer clear. The best way to ensure your grammar is accurate is trying to imagine someone reading the piece out loud. Does your writing make sense when you read it out loud in your head? As for spelling, you need to spell correctly and try to use longer, more complicated words that might be a bit trickier to spell. So in this answer, all of the spelling is accurate and they've included some tricky, more specialist words like environment, contributor, and catastrophic. Remember that if you don't know how to spell longer, more complicated words like this, you can always try and think of a different word that could be used to replace it. rather than spelling it and getting it wrong. Make sure that you're comfortable with spelling simple words and you try to spell more complex words correctly as well. It's a good idea to check your spelling after you've written your answer, just to make sure that everything is spelled correctly. So we've now considered the first 3 criteria, which cover spelling, punctuation and grammar. So that's 44% of your marks for those already, quite a big chunk of the marks, so make sure that you are practicing your spelling, making sure that you know how to use different pieces of punctuation correctly, and making sure that your grammar is accurate. So now let's take a look at the composition of this text. So we'll start by considering whether it is clear. Does the writing all make sense? Well, yes, it definitely does. We've had a read through and everything is crystal clear. It's easy for the reader to understand what the writer's talking about. So once you've finished your answer, you should read through it and consider whether anybody at all would be able to understand what you've written. Your answer also has to be an appropriate detail and length. So an appropriate length for this answer, we have a suggested word count of 250 to 300 words, and this answer meets that word count. In terms of detail, we've used lots of different relevant details in order to fully answer the question. So they've considered, should we reduce the amount that we fly? And they've said that flying is a major contributor to global warming, and says that we should reduce the amount that we fly. So consider staying at home rather than going to foreign retreats. We've also considered whether we should only take holidays in the UK. This person thinks that we definitely should, because the UK boasts outstanding sights of natural beauty and you'll be rewarded with the same excitable feeling. Should the price of plane tickets go up to stop so many people flying? That's been considered as well. They've said we should also put pressure on airlines to increase the prices of their plane tickets. And then they've gone into detail explaining the reasons for this, saying that even though different sectors will be unhappy about this, the earth is more important. And finally, are people's rights to have a holiday abroad more important than the planet? They've asked a very similar question here. Surely the survival of Earth is more important than a week's holiday. And they're saying that it is a selfish attitude for people to be going on holidays abroad. So they've addressed all of the points in the question, and they have effectively included a range of details in their answer to make it an appropriate length. When you're writing your answers, you should also be thinking about the formatting and organisation of your text. So you want to choose an appropriate range of organisational features that are going to be matching with the text type, the audience and the purpose of the text. So we've been told that we need to write an article. So an article needs a heading, and we've definitely got one of those here, separated from the text. And then we've also got a subheading here and some bullet points. These are really good organisational features that help the reader to navigate through the text and to separate the text out so that it's easier to understand. You could use a few different organisational features here. You could try to use more subheadings perhaps, or you could use a text box, but this is perfectly satisfactory for the article format. Another thing that we need to make sure that we're doing is using paragraphs in our answers. Paragraphs help to break the text up into different sections based on different topics or ideas, and this makes the answer much easier to read. So the first paragraph here introduces what the article's about and introduces the associated environmental issues that are linked to flying. The second paragraph, we have the impacts of flying listed here, following on from the environmental issues talked about in the first paragraph. Then we've got paragraph 3, which explains the merits of holidays in the UK and the environmental benefits of holidaying locally. Paragraph 4 moves away from the consumer holidaying in Britain and suggests that we need to put pressure on the airlines. And then finally, paragraph 5 reinforces the opinion that we need to act now and reduce environmental impacts of plane travel. So the paragraphs add structure to the answer, and each paragraph talks about something slightly different, a different topic. Your answers will also need to be cohesive, and using paragraphs can really help with this. So to achieve cohesion, we need to make sure that we link sentences and paragraphs together, and we join up our ideas and information so that the answer flows effectively. So here we've got sentences flowing on from one another and being linked together, and all sentences that are in the same paragraph are focused on the same topic. So if we have a look at the third paragraph here, the UK boasts some simply outstanding sites of natural beauty, from the sunny south coast to the scenic architecture of the nation's favourite cities. There really is something for everyone. And then they say, our plea to you, consider these spots. So referring to the spots, the cities in the previous sentence there. And you will be rewarded with the same excitable feeling. Only this time, linking to the previous sentence again, your mind will be cleansed with the knowledge that you yourself are helping the environment. So we've just talked about helping the environment, and then we're going to follow on from this by saying, even just making a small change like this, referring again to previous sentences, to your holiday scheduling will make a tremendous difference. So all of the sentences really link together, almost like jigsaw pieces, forming a full picture, full jigsaw. To add even more cohesion to the answer, we've got connective words and punctuation that are used to make sentences more complex and put ideas together effectively. So in the first paragraph, we've got the use of and here to add another idea, so contributing to global warming and the climate crisis. In the fourth paragraph down here, we have however. Now this is used to contrast this final sentence from the previous ideas. And similarly, we've got but in paragraph 5. And that is again contrasting, saying that doubters say that it's a good chance for people to escape, but the writer's giving their opinion that this is a selfish attitude. So as well as being cohesive and joined up really effectively, you need to use appropriate language and register in your answers. So your answers need to be having the right kind of tone and style to match the reader that it is aimed at. So this answer is very much suited to the purpose because it explores the issue of how flights impact the environment throughout. So if we refer back to the question, always make sure that you are going back to the question with every paragraph that you write to make sure that you're focusing your answer. We are focusing on flying, we are focusing on climate change and global warming, and the answer is reflecting this. It's also suited to the audience because we are writing for a student magazine, so we're writing for a sort of young, informal audience of students. We've got a reflection of this at the end here when they say we as students must take measures to protect our futures. So they are directly addressing the audience and acknowledging that they are students. We've also got appropriate language used. So we've got a tone of urgency here, saying there's no better time than the present and we must act now. So this creates quite a serious tone, and we're focusing on the survival of the earth, something quite important here. So we've got a serious and urgent issue overall, and that really reflects the question, which is about quite a serious issue, global warming and climate change. We're also trying to persuade the reader here, giving a lot of different opinions about the topic. So there's a use of rhetorical questions here. For example, did you know that flying is a major contributor to global warming and the climate crisis? And surely the survival of Earth is more important than a week's holiday. So trying to get the reader to feel quite guilty about going on holiday abroad and trying to get them to think about their impact on the climate. We've also got the use of alliteration in catastrophic climate crisis to draw the reader's attention right from the very start and make them focus on this issue. So overall, really well suited to the purpose and audience, using appropriate language and register throughout. Finally, does this answer contain any complex sentences? Using complex sentences in your answers will show the examiner that you are able to link ideas together effectively, and it will make your answer more cohesive as well. So in this answer, we do have some longer, more complex sentences. For example, the UK boasts some simply outstanding sites of natural beauty, from the sunny south coast to the scenic architecture of the nation's favourite cities. There's really something for everyone. So this kind of has three different ideas and parts joined together. The idea that the UK contains natural beauty, and then giving examples of beautiful places, and then saying there really is something for everyone, so appealing to everybody. Lots of different ideas joined together in one complex sentence there. You should try to include as many of these kinds of complex sentences as possible to show that you can make connections between multiple ideas or pieces of information, but just make sure that your sentences aren't so long that they become unclear and difficult to understand. So overall, this is a really effective answer because it addresses all of the points raised by the question. The answer makes sense and it flows effectively. We've got correct formatting used for an article, and paragraphs are used effectively as well, with paragraphs linking really well and joining on to one another. We have accurate spelling throughout and correct use of a range of punctuation. And the writing is appropriate for the audience and purpose specified in the question. Now, you could try and write this answer for yourself, and your answer might be quite a bit different to this one. This one tries to persuade the reader and has particularly strong views on the topic, but you could choose to give a more balanced view or give the opposite view to this and say that holidaying abroad is really more important than caring so much about the environment. So lots of different options to go for and lots of opportunities to get creative. Now we'll have a look at question 2. Your work placement in the marketing department at a theme park has come to an end. Write a formal letter to the manager of the marketing department to thank them for the experience. You could cover thanking the manager and the team, what you found valuable, which parts you particularly enjoyed, suggestions to improve the experience for the next work placement candidate, and your goals for your future career. Then we've got the person to write to mentioned here, and we're told to write 5 to 6 paragraphs. So we need to focus on writing about our experience of a work placement in a marketing department at a theme park. So anything that we write about has to be related to this placement specifically. The text type that we're writing, the form is a formal letter. So we've been given the style there as well as the text type. And we're writing to the manager of the marketing department. So the manager that we've been working with during our placement at this theme park. And we want to thank them. So it's a thank you letter that we're writing. We've been given some bullet points that we might want to consider as inspiration. Now these are just things that you could cover, which means that you could consider other ideas if you're feeling creative, but make sure that any ideas that you are including are really well adapted to the purpose, to the thanking of the manager and the audience of the manager as well. So we need to write 5 to 6 paragraphs based on this question. So let's have a read through the sample answer, and if you've already written your answer, you can compare it with this one and see what you could improve, or if you haven't already written it, then you can use this for inspiration of what to write. So we've got the name of the sender there and their address and the date as well, and then here we have the name of the recipient and their address. Dear Ms. Stevens, I'm writing this letter to thank you and your team for the most rewarding experience that I've had working at the theme park. It has really helped me to progress my professional career, and I am excited to see what the future holds. Your company's guidance has allowed my creative skills to flourish, in addition to developing contacts with some key personnel in the marketing world. Furthermore, I believe that I am now comfortable with all the different marketing techniques, which I cannot thank you enough for. This placement has also enabled me to become accustomed to the working world and the standard daily routine, which is some valuable preparation. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time here, especially spending time with all the friendly colleagues who made me feel so welcome. However, that does not compare to the highlight of the placement, seeing my work develop from initial ideas to starring on the company's various social media platforms. This gave me an unforgettable feeling of self-confidence, which I will cherish forever. However, with all due respect, I feel that my placement would have been improved if I had more freedom to operate and express myself. I think that if you allow the next set of placement people this kind of liberty, you will create a golden generation of marketing assistants. With regards to my own plans, I will be furthering my career by going to university to obtain a degree in this field. This will allow me to gain further experience and relevant subject knowledge and build on the foundation which my experience at your company has formed. Thanks again for this opportunity. Yours sincerely, Carrie Sell. So let's go ahead and look at the positive aspects of this answer based on the marking criteria. So we'll start with punctuation. Now this answer correctly uses a capital letter at the start of every sentence and a full stop at the end. We've also got capital letters used in the word I. You should always write I as a capital letter, never as a lowercase letter. And we have capital letters at the start of names. So for example, Miss Stevens. We've also got commas that are used throughout the answer to add some further details and ideas onto sentences. So for example, we have a comma after furthermore here. We have another comma after however. So they're used after these sort of connecting words. And we also have a comma used here to sort of add more detail about what will happen once they have gone to university. So this will allow me to gain further experience and relevant subject knowledge, and then adding on that they will build on the foundation of the experience at the company. Are there any other pieces of punctuation? Well, we have semicolons that have been used to add additional information and opinions, and these connect sentences together as well. So overall, we've got really good uses of punctuation throughout the answer. All of it is used accurately. You could try to use a few more different types of punctuation, for example, brackets or colons, but if you're not sure how to use those, that's absolutely fine, so long as you are using commas, capital letters and full stops correctly throughout your answers. As well as punctuation, we need to consider grammar and spelling. So to achieve correct grammar, your sentences will need to be accurate and make sense on their own. Now we've had a read through all of this and every single sentence made sense on its own. Everything was crystal clear and the grammar was correct. As for spelling, you'll need to spell correctly and try your best to use longer words that might be trickier to spell in your answers. So in this answer, all of the spelling is accurate and some trickier, more specialist words have been included. For For example, we have valuable, personnel, techniques, and accustomed. So just make sure before your exam that you are comfortable with spelling and that you have practiced your spelling in advance. It's also a good idea to check your answer after you've written it to make sure that all of your spelling is correct. So now that we've considered spelling, punctuation and grammar, let's take a look at the composition of the answer. So to begin with, we need to make sure that all writing is clear and makes sense. And our good spelling, punctuation and grammar will help with this. But we just need to make sure that if somebody else is reading it, it all makes sense to them. So make sure that all of your writing is crystal clear and there's no sort of ambiguity where people might be unsure of what you've written. Your writing also needs to be detailed and an appropriate length. So for this question, we have been told to write 5 to 6 paragraphs. We haven't been given an exact word count, but we've got a number of paragraphs to write. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs in this answer, so we have met that criteria. The answer also has to include appropriate details. So this answer uses appropriate detail because it addresses all of the different bullet points in the question. So thanking the manager and the team, they've said, I'm writing this letter to thank you. And they say thanks again for this opportunity at the end. So we've definitely covered the first bullet point. What you found valuable. Well, they've explained what they found valuable. They've said that spending time with the friendly colleagues made them feel welcome, and the highlight of the placement was seeing their work develop. So they've included some detail here, they've expanded on that point and explored how they felt as a result of parts of the placement, which parts you particularly enjoyed. They've spoken about that as well. So they've enjoyed spending time with colleagues and they've enjoyed seeing their ideas develop. Suggestions to improve the experience for the next candidate. They've talked about this in this paragraph here. They've given one suggestion here and then they've given a bit of extra detail, explained what the effect of this change will create. So it will create a golden generation of marketing assistants by allowing more freedom. And then finally, goals for your future career. They've definitely covered that as well. So they've said that their own plans, they'll be furthering their career by going to university. So they've definitely included details that have been suggested by the question. It's very much focused on thanking the manager. And so the detail is appropriate, the length is appropriate, and they would gain full marks for that aspect of the marking criteria. In addition to being detailed, your answers should be formatted correctly. So you need to choose appropriate organisational features that are going to make your writing clear and effective. So we've been asked to write a letter, a formal letter, and there are a few different organisational features that we need to include whenever we're writing a letter. So at the top here, we have the address of the sender and the date. Now, there are two very important features that we need to include in every letter that we write, as well as the address of the recipient. Then we need to include a polite sort of introduction, a greeting for the letter. Then we need to use paragraphs, and finally we need a sign-off, yours sincerely in this case. Now, sincerely is used for people that we know the name of. We know that her name is Miss Stevens, so we've used sincerely. If we didn't know the name of the person, if we'd written Dear Sir/Madam at the top, then we would use yours faithfully. And then finally, after yours sincerely, we have Carrie Sell, so the name of the sender. So you need to be using all of these features whenever you write a letter to get full marks for formatting an organisation. You also need to use cohesive paragraphs that follow one another. So the first paragraph is introducing what the letter is about. So writing this letter to thank you. And we're focusing on the theme park work experience here, the most rewarding experience that I have had working at the theme park. The second paragraph explains the skills that they gained on this placement while thanking Ms. Stevens for the placement. In the third paragraph, we get more details about the feelings that they had when working for the company and some of the highlights of the experience. In the fourth paragraph, we have some constructive feedback about the work placement. And then finally, we've got an explanation of the future plans and another example of where they've thanked the manager for the placement. So all of these paragraphs follow on from each other effectively, making the answer cohesive. Now, cohesion is another marking point. It essentially means that all of your answers need to be joined up effectively. All of the ideas need to be connected in a way that is logical and can be easily followed by the reader. So we have sentences in each paragraph, all relating to the same topic and flowing on from each other really well. So for example, in the second paragraph, your company's guidance has allowed my creative skills to flourish in addition to developing contacts with some key personnel in the marketing world. We've followed on from this sentence using this connective word here, furthermore. Furthermore, I believe that I'm now comfortable with all the different marketing techniques. So they're focusing on creative skills and then linking this to marketing techniques that they've learned, which I cannot thank you enough for. This placement has also enabled me to become accustomed to the working world. So they've used that connective there also to connect their ideas to the previous sentences. So overall, it's a really cohesive answer. We've got connective words used throughout, and we have commas and other punctuation to connect ideas together. And then we have paragraphs connected as well. For example, here we've used a connective word, however, at the start of the paragraph to link it to the previous one. As well as being cohesive, your answer will need to be suited to the audience and purpose of a text. So you'll need to use the right tone, the right kind of style, and appropriate language and register to match up with your audience and your aims for writing. So in this answer, they've focused on the positives of the work placement. The entire answer is very much focused on their experience of the work placement, and that answers the question. They've definitely addressed all of the bullet points as we discussed earlier. It's also very much suited to the audience. That it's been addressed to the correct person, Ms. Stevens, and there is a clear understanding that this person is the manager. So in the first paragraph it says your team, so that's clear that they're the manager of the team. And we've also got your company. So it's clear that they're talking to the manager, the boss of the company. It's also suited to this audience because it is written with formal language. We've been told to write a formal letter, and this is definitely formal. It uses professional language and standard English without any slang phrases or contractions like can't, isn't, won't. We've also got some techniques to create a sort of positive tone, as this is a letter of thanks. So we have emotive language like thoroughly enjoyed my time here. We know that they are addressing the purpose of explaining their experience because they have used I and my throughout the answer, and they have focused on their personal perspective using phrases like I feel that. So overall, it's really well suited to the audience and purpose of the text. The final piece of criteria that we need to address is complex sentences. So, does this answer use sentences that connect multiple ideas or pieces of information together so that everything is connected? Well, we certainly do have that. For example, furthermore, I believe that I am now comfortable with all the different marketing techniques, which I cannot thank you enough for. So here we've connected a few different ideas. We've used furthermore to address that we are referring to the previous sentence. And then we've explained that we're now comfortable with marketing techniques. And then we've linked this to the idea of thanks. So we've got a few different examples of complex sentences. Another example here is, however, that does not compare to the highlight of the placement, seeing my work develop from initial ideas to starring on the company's various social media platforms. So we've got a lot of different ideas and information contained within one sentence, but it still makes sense and flows quite cohesively. Make sure that you try to include as many complex sentences as you can manage within your answers, but also ensure that you're not writing too much because you might start veering off into different topics, or you might start to confuse a reader if your sentences are too long. The final piece of criteria that we need to address is complex sentences. So, does this answer use sentences that connect multiple ideas or pieces of information together so that everything is connected? Well, we certainly do have that. For example, furthermore, I believe that I am now comfortable with all the different marketing techniques, which I cannot thank you enough for. So here we've connected a few different ideas. We've used furthermore to address that we are referring to the previous sentence. And then we've explained that we're now comfortable with marketing techniques. And then we've linked this to the idea of thanks. So we've got a few different examples of complex sentences. Another example here is, however, that does not compare to the highlight of the placement, seeing my work develop from initial ideas to starring on the company's various social media platforms. So we've got a lot of different ideas and information contained within one sentence, but it still makes sense and flows quite cohesively. Make sure that you try to include as many complex sentences as you can manage within your answers, but also ensure that you're not writing too much because you might start veering off into different topics, or you might start to confuse a reader if your sentences are too long. So overall, what can we take away from this answer? Well, we know that it's a very, very good answer because it has addressed all of the criteria that we've just talked about. We've effectively answered the question. That's probably the main thing. We've focused on the work placement. We know that it's focused on the marketing department at a theme park, and they've definitely addressed that in the question. The letter is particularly formal, using formal language, and is suitable for the manager of the marketing department. It's also suited to the purpose of thanking them for the experience and covers all of the bullet points addressed in the question. They've also used the correct address in the correct place. The answer makes sense altogether and it flows very effectively. Correct formatting has been used and paragraphs have been used effectively to sort of tell a story and to give thanks. Accurate spelling and punctuation have been used throughout the answer, and the writing is appropriate for the audience and purpose overall. So when you're writing your answer to this question, think about what this student has done, see if you can use specialist words and similar formatting features to make sure that you're making a really effective response. And be sure to check your spelling, punctuation and grammar afterwards for any errors that might lose you marks in the exam.